Evangelical Seminary's 25th Annual National Conference on Christian Apologetics. It's October 12th and 13th in Charlotte, North Carolina. Homeschool and other discounts are available. Save more when you register by May 1st at ses.edu.
This is a very dangerous day today for lawyer-client relations.
They raid an office of a personal attorney early in the morning. This is the most conflicted group of people I've ever seen. The Attorney General made a terrible mistake when he recused himself. Why don't I just fire Mueller? Many people have said you should fire him. This is a pure and simple witch hunt.
This may be an attempt to squeeze Cohen. He's the lawyer. He's the guy who knows all the facts about Donald Trump, and to get him to turn against his client. If this were Hillary Clinton being investigated and they went into her lawyer's office, the ACLU would be on every television station in America jumping up and down. The deafening silence of the ACLU is really appalling.
Freedom prospers when religion is vibrant and the rule of law under God is acknowledged.
An informed patriot is what we want.
Welcome to American Family Radio's Focal Point, the home of muscular Christianity on conservative talk radio.
Muscular Christianity.
Where we relentlessly explore the intersection of truth and politics.
The trouble with our liberal friends is not that they're ignorant. It's just that they know so much that isn't so.
Now, here's your host, Brian Fisher.
Welcome to Focal Point. I am Brian Fisher, your congenial, convivial, and amiable host. The program Focal Point is the home of muscular Christianity on conservative talk radio, and you are listening to the American Family Radio Network. Just a welcome to all of you that are in our listening audience. It's just an honor for us that you would take time out of your day or just find a way to get your receptor, your radio, your whatever, tuned to our signal and listen to our programming. We're honored. We want to be worthy of your trust every single day. Glad to have you in the conversation. I want to begin by turning our attention to the Word of God. We're using a schedule you can find at pray.afa.net. Pray.afa.net. We are in the book of 1 Kings. We're just in a section where Solomon now is building a house for God. Remember, David said, I want to do that for you. I want to build you a house, God. And God said, no, I'm going to build a house for you. I'm going to build a dynasty. That's the house I'm going to build for you. It'll be for your son, because I want a man of peace to be identified with my temple. So that's what Solomon is doing. And he hired a man by the name of Hiram, who were told to do all the work in bronze. A lot of stuff was done in bronze for this temple, this brand new place to worship God. Hiram was full of wisdom, the Bible says. Basic meaning of that word is skill or technical skill. Means he was a very skilled craftsman in working with bronze. He had understanding. This word means discernment. This is the capacity for discerning a right course of action, being able to choose between alternatives and pick just the right course. You can imagine the many decisions that would have to be made in building a temple of this magnitude, the construction problems that would have to be solved, and Hiram knew what to do to solve every practical problem. And he had skill, the Bible says. Literally, he had knowledge. This is skill that he had acquired by spending a lifetime learning and honing his craft. Kind of reminds me a little bit of 8 Days of Hope. You know, what Steve Tiber and the gang do is they get skilled workers to rebuild these homes. They're doing it for God's glory. They don't want amateurs doing the work. They don't want to leave behind something that is shoddy and sloppy and will not serve the family. So they make sure that the work is done skillfully, so it represents the best that the workers have to give and brings honor and glory to God. Now, Hiram built 2 pillars. Right where you entered the temple proper, there were these 2 massive pillars, 27 feet high, with the 7.5-foot high capitals on top of them. So these 2 pillars were 34.5 feet high, and they were 18 feet around at the base. So these are pretty good size pillars, and Hiram named them. One of them he named Jachin, which means in Hebrew, he will establish, referring to God. God's the one that can establish. And the other one was named Boaz, which literally means in him is strength, which symbolized God's strength. So these pillars symbolize the truth that God is the one who is our source of strength. He is the one who is our source of steadiness, who is the one who is our source of stability, so that we can stand strong and immovable when the winds and the waves are against us. Now in chapter 8, they brought the ark of the Lord up from the city of David from its home in the tabernacle, the tent. City of David was right below the Temple Mount. That was where the tabernacle was, the tent, the one they'd used in the wilderness. The ark is now being brought up to its permanent place in the Holy of Holies, the most holy place on earth, because the ark was where God's presence on earth was localized. Remember, after the incarnation, God's Spirit could go everywhere and be everywhere, but before that, God's presence was localized in the Ark of the Covenant in the temple. So it was the most holy place on the face of the earth. Now we're told in verse 10, when the priest came out of the holy place, a cloud filled the house of the Lord, and get this, the cloud was so thick, so intense, so heavy, verse 11, that the priests could not stand to minister because of the cloud. For the glory of the Lord filled the house of the Lord. Now we'll pray in a minute that the glory of the Lord, the brightness, the radiance of God would fill every church and every congregation, fill each of us, because our bodies are likewise temples of God. Now there's one other thing. The basic meaning of the word glory has to do with weight or with heaviness. I want to tell you about one of the most intense spiritual experiences of my life. I've talked about it before. I will talk about it again because it was one of the most unique spiritual experiences I've ever had. When I pastored in Boise, one of the very first regional Promise Keepers conferences was held there. And one of the themes of Promise Keepers, if you were involved and you remember, was racial reconciliation. And one of my pastoral friends, his name was Bobby, he was the pastor of the largest black congregation in town. So I said to Bobby, look, since PK is coming to town, let me see if I can arrange for one of the PK speakers to speak, and we'll see if we can snag a worship leader from the Promise Keeper roster, and let's have a joint worship service, my church and yours, to celebrate our racial oneness in Christ. And so we did. Now that Sunday morning, when I went to pick up the speaker and the worship leader at the hotel, we pulled up in front of the church, and I experienced at that moment something I've never experienced before or since. When we came to a stop in front of the church, I felt the presence, the glory of the Lord in that van in a way I had never experienced it before. In fact, His presence, His glory was so strong in that van that we could not move. We literally, physically could not move, just like these priests couldn't stand in the temple to minister. We were pinned in our seats by this heaviness of the glory of the Lord, and we knew it was a signal of His delight in what we were doing. We knew it symbolized God's favor and His delight in what we were doing, and a sign that His favor would be on the worship service. And it took us a few minutes before the presence of God lifted enough that we could even get out of the van and go into the building. And we had a terrific worship service. This is in the middle of the summer. Bobby's church building had no air conditioning, so it got warm in that building, everybody waving those Martin Luther King fans. And we started the service at 11 o'clock. We didn't get out till 2:15, but we weren't even aware of the passage of time. It just went by like that. At one point in the service, my head elder and I knelt down before Bobby and his head deacon, and we washed their feet. It was a holy moment. At any rate, what we experienced that day was just a slice, just a taste of the glory that filled God's house in Solomon's day. Well, let's go to prayer. Lord God, I thank you that you have given spiritual gifts to me and to every member of this listening audience, every member of the Focal Point listening audience, to use in building up the body of Christ, the holy temple in which you dwell by your Spirit. I pray that with your help, we, everyone in this listening audience, may become highly skilled and experienced in using the gifts you have given to us, just as Hiram was in his area of giftedness. As Hiram did all the work that Solomon assigned to him, so may we do all the work you assign us to do. I pray that we will find our strength in you, so that you may establish us and make us strong, steady, and secure. Your cloud filled your temple when the priests had set the Ark of the Covenant in place. I pray for each congregation in our nation that you will fill them with the cloud of your glory, so that the glory of the Lord, your glory, may fill the temple of the Lord. Your presence was so strong that the priests could not even stand to perform their service. I invite you to send that same strong and glorious power and presence into our lives, the life of your church and the life of our nation, that we may reflect your glory to everyone around us. In the name of Jesus, amen.
I feel like AFR has personally taken me under their wings and has been educating me to be a stronger, more compassionate soldier in this good fight. I'm so grateful to the Lord for all of you. I now can hear the word preached several times a day and be encouraged, convicted when I need to be, and fed the truth in love.
Hello, this is David Jeremiah, and I'm so thankful that my program, Turning Point, is aired on American Family Radio, because we are both committed to the same thing, being a voice of sanity, hope, and faith in a world desperately in need of all three. Won't you keep American Family Radio strong through your prayers and financial support?
We're so thankful for how God is using American Family Radio. Please consider partnering with us during our 3-day share-a-thon beginning April 17th.
Pray the Lord will continue to bless your ministry and keep it strong until He returns. God bless you.
Nor do people light a lamp and put it under a basket, but on a stand, and it gives light to all in the house. My name is Abraham Hamilton III, and this is the Hamilton Corner. The Cato Institute released a new poll that shows 71% of Americans believe that political correctness has silenced important discussions our society needs to have. Democrats are unique, according to the poll, in that 53% do not feel they need to self-censor. 73% of Republicans, however, and 58% of independents say they keep some political beliefs to themselves. Of those who self-censor, do you think they refrain from sharing political views or biblical ones?
Listen to the Hamilton Corner, weekdays from 5 to 6 p.m. Central on AFR. For more from Abraham Hamilton III, Public Policy Analyst for the American Family Association.
This is Focal Point with Brian Fisher on American Family Radio.
Hi, welcome back to Focal Point American Family Radio. Brian Fisher is my name. Just telling you about the experience I had when it was the glory of the Lord is the only thing I can describe, the heaviness of God, the heaviness of His presence pinning me and several others to our seats in this van. We were prepared to go into a racial reconciliation worship service. I was talking to Rob on the break. He had a similar experience, and one day Rob will take a few minutes to chat about that on the program. One other thing I want to be sure and talk about before we get into content, we're going to move into this business with a raid on the office of Donald Trump's attorney. But I want to share one other thing. A year ago today, I should have died twice. 1 year ago today is the day when I experienced a pulmonary embolism. I developed a blood clot as a consequence of the major cancer surgery that I'd had a month before. That clot went up through my heart and into my lungs. One of the doctors that looked at it said it was the biggest blood clot that he'd ever seen. And I was out for a walk, getting ready to, I was going to take a walk. I was a shower, going to come into work. And I blacked out in the middle of the street in our neighborhood. I mean, I just keeled over, collapsed on the pavement, fell over right on my hip, the same one I broke back in 2010. Nothing happened this time except I had a huge monster bruise for weeks. But I finally came to in the street. I crawled up on a neighbor's lawn, and I had enough energy to call Debbie. She came, and my doctor told me, look, most people that wind up where you were, they fall over like that, they collapse because of a blood clot, they die right on the spot. That's 90% of the people, they die right on the spot. And I had a good friend whose nephew was recovering from surgery. It was like a knee replacement surgery or something. He developed a blood clot in the hospital, and he fell over in the hospital hallway, in the hospital corridor, and they couldn't revive him. He died right there on the spot. So that was the first place at which God spared my life, brought me to, enabled me to get a ride from Debbie, from my wife, my bride, to the hospital. They rushed me into emergency, and the doctor that treated me, the cardiologist, he said, look, what we're going to do is we're going to run a kind of a shaft up the vein that starts in your thigh up through into your lungs. And on the end of this shaft, we'll have some blood clot stuff, and we're going to kind of wave those wands, the shaft, and kind of waft the blood thinner in the direction of the blood clot, and we're going to hope that that blood thinner will dissolve those clots so the blood flow can return. You can get your breath, and you can stay alive. And he looked at me right in the eye. I'll never forget this. He looked me right in the eye, and I don't know how this fits with bedside manner, but he looked me right in the eye, and he said, look, only 30% of the people that go through this procedure live. And then he put me under. So, but anyway, I lived. It worked. And I had a checkup recently. We had an ultrasound to look for any remaining remnants of that clot. It's completely gone. I've been on a drug called Eliquis since then. That's a blood thinner. So the clot is completely gone. No no further threat of any kind of blood clot. So anyway, my praise and honor and thanksgiving go to God today. A year ago, he saved my life twice, and I am grateful beyond my ability to express to my Lord and Savior and to the God that I worship. So thank you, God.
Amen. And there are a lot of people listening right now that prayed for you, like me and Jeff here locally. We have that personal contact, but there were a lot of prayers going up for you during that time. I know it was a traumatic time for a lot of your family and for us too, as co-workers since you came here. And we shared a lot of prayers together over the years, and God truly blessed us.
Yeah, and I also remember visiting you in the hospital that day before they put you under, and I just want to let people know your faith was still strong. You still had every confidence in God, no matter what happened, that you were going to be okay, and it was moving and instructive at the same time. So thank you for that.
All right, well, you're welcome. Well, thank God for that. I never felt any fear, never felt any panic. And again, that is just a God thing, because that's not my normal human response. So I want to thank you guys for praying, and everybody here at AFA praying for me. And I mean, I was out of commission for several days, so I had no idea what was going on here. But apparently the word got out that I was in kind of dire straits, and people went to prayer here. God heard, and God answered. So I owe gratitude to a lot of people, Jeff and Rob and everybody here at AFA that prayed for me, everybody in our listening audience that prayed for me. I want to thank you. It means so much to me. You know, I get notes, Facebook posts. People still telling me, we'll get callers that'll call in and say, look, we're still praying for your health. I want to tell you how much I appreciate that, how it touches me to know of your care, people that I may never get a chance to meet. But anyway, I'm very grateful for your support and your faith, as well as being a listener, just for being a spiritual source of strength for me and really for our whole team here at Focal Point.
Amen.
So thank you. A couple of winnable war moments to start the program with. I try to tell you at the end of every day. Sometimes I forget, but tell you virtually every day that we are fighting a winnable war. I got two instances today. First is from Nebraska. The governor of Nebraska, Pete Ricketts is his name. He signed a budget last week that will eliminate federal family planning money and funding to Planned Parenthood of the Heartland. So Planned Parenthood in Nebraska has been defunded completely. It's an $8.8 billion budget, and Planned Parenthood has been defunded. That's one of the things that the Trump administration has made sure that they provided states the opportunity to opt out of sending their Title X funding to organizations or businesses that perform abortions. And what Nebraska has also done is they are mandating that health clinics in the state legally, financially, and physically separate from abortion facilities. So if you've got a health problem, you're going to a community health center, you can't go into that building and also get an abortion. If you want an abortion, that business, that health center, so-called, has got to have a separate facility for that. You know, and Governor Ricketts and this budget passed in Nebraska on a 38-6 vote. They've got a unicameral legislature, I believe, in Nebraska, so just one vote, 38-6. Governor Ricketts said that Nebraska is a pro-life state, so our budget should reflect our values. Any organization can have access to these dollars as long as they don't provide abortions. You know, right now Planned Parenthood does over 321,000 abortions every year and receives over $500 million in taxpayer funds. But that may change. Here's the second winnable war moment, is Republicans in Congress have held the line on ensuring that the Department of Health and Human Services has flexibility to change regulations governing how its budget is spent. Title X has $286 million allocated to it, but the Department of Health and Human Services can decide how that money is spent. And the control of these taxpayer dollars will be in the hands of Valerie Huber, who is the Deputy Assistant Secretary for Population Affairs at Health and Human Services. Now, Planned Parenthood can still apply for the grants, but the final arbiter of whether these funds are dispersed to Planned Parenthood will be with Huber, who was a longtime advocate of sexual risk avoidance and a critic of the scandal-plagued Parenthood and its sexually explicit curricula. Now, the left is just in a major panic. I mean, they're looking at not having any kind of access to $286 million of taxpayer money, so they are freaking out over this. But that's another winnable war moment for today. Here's a not winnable war moment. I couldn't believe this. This is a survey. This is from CBS Local in Pittsburgh. A new survey has found, listen to this, that 1/3 of young millennials in the United States do not believe the earth is round. This is 18 to 24-year-olds do not believe that the earth is round. Now, one of the things that speaks to, you know, why are we letting millennials, they don't even believe the earth is round, they're out there lecturing us about gun control. Yeah. Does that make any sense to you? And it's also an indication of a couple of things, that millennials are gullible. They're still growing up. They're still developing their faculties of discernment. And it's also an indication of the abysmal failure of our education system. I mean, they're so busy talking about how many genders there are and how to be transgenders and what pronouns you ought to use and how you can change your gender identity from day to day. They're not even educating people about the solar system. So a lot to learn from that little snippet. Now, we'll start into this here when I get a chance. I got a couple other sound bites, may take us to the bottom of the hour. You know there was a fire in Trump Tower over the weekend. There are no sprinklers in Trump Tower, but they weren't required. They weren't code at the time. So some people tried to make an issue out of that, but there was no code violation. But there was a man that was burned to death in his apartment. Apparently the start of the fire was accidental. He was kind of an art dealer. He was in big financial trouble. So who knows what went on there. But when the word went out that Trump Tower was on fire, here's what one mental health counselor said. He sent a tweet out saying that he was, quote, excited about the fire. He was excited when I heard there was a fire at Trump Tower, hoping there were no injuries. With that said, I hope the fire rages. And a guy got burned to death in that fire. Now, David Crosby, you know who he is, Crosby, Nash, Stills, and Young. He, when he heard about it, he tweeted out, "Burn, baby, burn." And this Jeffrey guy, the mental health guy, said, "Were you talking about Trump Tower?" And he said, "Yes, I was. Burn, baby, burn." He has since deleted that tweet as well. He should have. One other thing about Trump before we, we'll go to the break, and then we're going to get into the whole business about this raid on his lawyer's office. There are a lot of Democrats that are really upset with a rich Democrat by the name of Tom Steyer. This guy's a big-time environmentalist, but he's very, very wealthy. And he's been investing tens of millions of dollars, seriously, tens of millions of dollars in a national ad trying to convince Democrats to impeach Donald Trump. And they're not having it. And leaders in the Democratic Party, leaders in the Obama administration, like Eric Holder and David Axelrod, are saying, no, it's premature. You got to have some evidence first. But he claims, this Steyer guy claims Trump is such a danger to the republic that he's got to be impeached right now. David Axelrod said, quote, Dems should not commit, in capital letters, to impeachment unless and until there is a demonstrable case for one. He says it's not just a matter of politics, it's a matter of principle. If we normalize impeachment, it'll be another hammer blow to democracy. I agree with that assessment. Eric Holder said, Axe is exactly right. Midterms should not be centered around questions of impeachment. Be right back.
This is Dr. Richard Land, president of Southern Evangelical Seminary. Welcome to Bringing Every Thought Captive. What do evangelicals believe about Jews? According to Lifeway Research in Nashville, 28% believe in replacement theology, in the belief that the Christian church has replaced the nation of Israel in God's future plans. 41% reject this belief, while 32% are, quote, unsure, end quote. Just over half of American evangelicals believe that the Bible teaches that one day in the future, most of the Jewish people will believe in Jesus as the Messiah. 16% disagree. 29% aren't sure. 86% of evangelicals believe sharing the gospel with Jewish people is important, and only 3% believe that it isn't important. One interesting note, the survey found that 1 in 3 evangelicals has Jewish friends, and 2% of evangelicals have a Jewish parent or a Jewish grandparent. I believe the Bible shows us that God has never canceled his promises to his chosen people, the Jews. And God made certain promises to them as Jews he did not make to me as a Gentile. One was that the land of Israel was given to the Jews forever. Another was that God blesses those who bless the Jews and curses those who curse the Jews. Still, salvation for all Jews and Gentiles is through Jesus the Messiah, who declared, I am the way, the truth, and the life. No man cometh unto the Father but by me. This is Richard Land.
This is Focal Point with Brian Fisher
on American Family Radio.
Listen to the audio podcast or download today's program at afr.net. You can also read Brian Fisher's columns at afa.net.
afa.net.
Howdy, Brian Fisher here. Program is Focal Point, the network, the American Family Radio Network, the home of muscular Christianity and the home of high-definition radio, more content per cubic inch of air than any other place on your radio dial. Well, let's talk about this thing that's been shaking up Washington. Everybody's been talking about this, that on a tip from Bob Mueller, this thing came from Bob Mueller. He was the source of this tip, and he had to go to Rosenstein with this to ask permission to go do it, to carry out this deal himself, this raid on this lawyer's office. And Rosenstein said, no, we better hand that over to the Attorney General. So Mueller is now outsourcing his attacks on the president. Now it's the New York office of the Attorney General that conducted this raid on the office of Donald Trump's personal and private attorney. Donald Trump is the only client that Michael Cohen has. He's his sole client. So whatever they're looking for in his office, whatever they collected, whatever they grabbed, they are hoping that this thing is not only going to implicate Michael Cohen, but is going to implicate the president in some kind of skullduggery. So we'll see how all of that plays out. This is unprecedented to have this kind of assault. You know, somebody called this thing a thermonuclear approach to a legal problem. I agree. It just ratchets this thing up into a scandal of immense proportions, and the possible consequences, the possible fallout from this are just absolutely enormous. You know, one of the interesting things, apparently Mueller is investigating Donald Trump in all of this over a $150,000 donation that he received from a Ukrainian. Here's point number 1. Ukraine is not Russia. Here's point number 2. There's nothing wrong or illegal with a Ukrainian giving $150,000 to a charity. And this was done in 2015, before Donald Trump had even declared that he was going to run for the presidency. Meanwhile, so it's 150 grand, and Mueller's all twisted up in a knot over that. Meanwhile, this same guy, this same steel magnate, his name is Victor Pinchuk, he gave to the Clinton Foundation, another charity, quote unquote, $13 million since 2006, and he had access to Hillary Clinton during that time while she served as Secretary of State. But is Bob Mueller investigating Hillary Clinton? The answer to that would be a big fat no. And this billionaire attended a dinner at the Clintons' residence in 2012, and through this guy named Doug Schoen, you might have seen him on Fox as a Democratic strategist, this Pinchuk guy lobbied the State Department in 2011 and 2013 while Hillary Clinton was Secretary of State, and he had given, by that time, $13 million to the Clinton Foundation. Schoen and Pinchuk met on several occasions in 2012. Bill Clinton attended Pinchuk's annual Yalta conference. New York Times reported on February 13 of 2014. He also attended the former president's 65th birthday party in Los Angeles, but again, apparently completely uninteresting to the special prosecutor. Now, one other thing about Hillary, apparently there's an investigation into this Haiti business, and there's a reason for an investigation into this Haiti business. They're apparently, and remember, this is the Clinton Foundation, this is where they kind of made their bones and started getting their biggest donations over all of the good work they were doing in Haiti. Well, apparently there is $37 million that is missing. This investigation is being conducted by the FBI. It's focusing on a missing $37 million from the Clinton Haiti Fund. This $37 million was sent to a post office box in Baltimore where the fund, the charity, had no office. Now, what's interesting is the most recent investigation of the Clinton Foundation took place under Rod Rosenstein, who was then the U.S. Attorney for Baltimore. So he utterly flubbed this thing. I mean, I don't think it's incompetence. I think he was covering for Hillary Clinton. Records available through the FBI vault confirm that the FBI and DOJ attorneys conducted investigations, impaneled grand juries, issued subpoenas, yet were unable to bring indictments or gain convictions against the many individuals and entities linked to the Clinton charity, which clearly engaged in a raft of frauds across state lines, which would make it a federal issue, and in numerous nations. And former director James Comey played a leadership role in all of these epic failures. So more dirt on the Clintons, more complete lack of interest on the part of the special prosecutor. So again, others are looking at this raid of Michael Cohen's office, the president's attorney. And this is American Thinker. I got a piece here that says, look, this is a thermonuclear approach to a legal investigation because of all the fallout that could come from this. And attorney Victoria Tenzing, good attorney, solid attorney, said that Mueller and his gang have weaponized the criminalized justice system. And Alan Dershowitz has talked at length about this. We must not criminalize political differences. And that's what Mueller is trying to do here with Donald Trump. And Joseph DeGenova, a former federal prosecutor, a former FBI agent, he said that what Mueller is doing is using the grand jury to intimidate people in order to try to influence Donald Trump's conduct. And you compare this and contrast this with the kid glove treatment afforded to Hillary Clinton. In fact, there's some suspicion out there. Some people think that maybe Mueller launched this raid because he's trying to get himself fired, that he wants to be fired. He wants to wear the martyr's mantle. He realizes that he's got nothing on Donald Trump. All these millions of dollars, all of these 17 high-priced attorneys are going to come up with nothing. And he's going to have egg all over his face because he didn't come up with a single solitary thing on Donald Trump. But if Trump fires him, then he's a martyr for the ages. This is like the Saturday Night Massacre under Nixon. And you can imagine the comparisons that would be drawn. So I don't know if Mueller is up to something like that, but it's very clear that he's got nothing on Donald Trump. There's no evidence of collusion or any kind of conspiracy. And, I mentioned yesterday that Bob Mueller worked with Viktor Yanukovych back in 2013 at the same time. He's the Ukrainian president. He was the Ukrainian president in 2013. And remember, Ukraine is not Russia, but they're going after Manafort because of work that he did in 2013 with Viktor Yanukovych. I'm looking at a picture right here of Mueller shaking hands with Viktor Yanukovych in 2013, June 6 of 2013. The allegations against Manafort are that he committed a crime or crimes arising out of payments he received from the Ukrainian government before and during the tenure of President Viktor Yanukovych. Now, maybe Mueller was the recipient of something similar, but again, no suspicion seems to attach to him. Now, I want to let's start with clip number R2. Let's start with Rand Paul here, because this is a great question. And what we're talking about here with Manafort and the Ukrainian president. And this is the question that Rand Paul has. Let's listen.
The first question we ought to ask is, what does this have to do with Russia? I thought the special prosecutor was investigating Russian collusion. Going after someone's personal attorney is a great overstep, I think, in the authority of the prosecutor. And this is why I have opposed really having special prosecutors for almost anything, because I think they abuse their authority. So I think Mueller has abused his authority. Now they say, well, he asked somebody else, another U.S. attorney, to do it. Yes, but this is coming at the behest of Mueller. So I think this investigation no longer has much to do with Russia. But I would warn people around America who say, that don't like the president, this is just fine because it's against President Trump. This is an enormous power that can be used against anybody.
Now, here's what Jonathan Turley said. This is clip R1 about this raid. He's a highly regarded attorney. We played sound bites from him all the time, frequent guest on network and cable news shows. And he says, look, this raid represents a genuine, bona fide threat to the president. Let's listen.
The president has to be very careful. The greatest danger that he faces is not Michael Cohen as a defendant, but Michael Cohen as bait. The president was actually in a fairly safe place 48 hours ago. He was following his attorney's advice. He was prepping for a negotiated and limited interview with Mueller. And then suddenly this happens. And if, in many ways, this could be as cunning as it is hostile on the part of Rod Rosenstein. He expanded the mandate for Mueller to go after Manafort on crimes that were far more remote than this. So why would he refer to the Southern District? Yeah. Well, it has a real threat for the president. It expands the investigation, involves the Southern District that can prosecute it. But if the president reacts aggressively, he could end up triggering a far more serious problem for himself and his presidency.
All right, so Turley says, look, this is a threat to the president, and maybe this is a part of Mueller's strategy to try to provoke Donald Trump into some kind of aggressive overreaction to get him in trouble. So a lot of different possibilities swirling around. Here's what Donald Trump said yesterday. Let's play clip number 1. Donald Trump, obviously not a happy camper with this raid on his attorney's office.
They find no collusion, and then they go from there and they say, well, let's keep going. And they raid an office of a personal attorney early in the morning. And I think it's a disgrace. So we'll be talking about it more. But this is the most conflicted group of people I've ever seen. The Attorney General made a terrible mistake when he did this and when he recused himself, or he should have certainly let us know if he was going to recuse himself, and we would have put a different Attorney General in. So he made what I consider to be a very terrible mistake for the country.
So it's taken out his wrath on Jeff Sessions again. You just wonder how much longer Jeff Sessions can possibly last. Jeff Sessions recused himself because the standards for recusal would require him to recuse himself from any investigation that was connected to the Trump campaign, because he served in the Trump campaign. So Jeff Sessions, if he was going to follow the law, had to recuse himself. There was no choice. Now, Donald Trump, I think, is finally coming around to recognizing that. What he's saying is, well, I wish Jeff Sessions had told me that before I picked him that he was going to have to recuse himself if there was an investigation, because then I would have hired somebody else. And City says what Jeff Sessions has done has made a terrible mistake for the country. So he's laying this off on Jeff Sessions because he recused himself, which I think it was his honorable and right duty to do. Then you've got these yahoos now that are going thermonuclear. That's what Bob Mueller is doing, is going thermonuclear on the President of the United States. You know, when Trump says this is the most conflicted group he's ever seen, he means the conflicts of interest in this group are just completely off the charts. We'll be right back with your phone calls. Stay with us.
Exposing Washington with Walker Wildman.
So who is responsible for the dysfunction in Washington? That's what we're going to be discussing today.
We have become one of the most litigious societies on the planet.
The goal of this show is to bring clarity to the news coming out of Washington, D.C., and to expose the deception that has plagued our nation's capital for decades.
Exposing Washington.
Each Saturday at 2:30 p.m. Central.
On American Family Radio.
A lot of folks ask me, how are people going to get saved in the tribulation if the church is gone and the Holy Spirit is gone? Well, these two witnesses are going to come and preach. And when we understand the message that they preach and all the miracles that go along with it, you won't have any trouble understanding how people get saved.
Join Dr. David Jeremiah for his series Escape the Coming Night, next time on Turning Point.
5:30 a.m. and 7 p.m. Central on American Family Radio.
The following is not an actor, but a real-life story from Trinity Debt Management.
I had a lot of credit card debt and I couldn't pay my bills. I was feeling so bad. I got to a point where I needed some help. So I reached out and contacted Trinity.
If you're in debt and you need help, call Trinity at 1-800-788-1813 to talk to a certified counselor.
They were able to take all of my different payments and put them all together.
Trinity will consolidate your accounts into one easy-to-manage monthly payment, put a stop to late fees and over-limit charges, reduce your interest, and possibly improve your credit score. You'll save thousands.
And they were actually able to work with my creditors. I've been able to pay off close to $15,000 in the last 18 months.
If your debt has you down, call Trinity at 1-800-788-1813.
My name is Stephanie, and I'm debt-free for keeps.
1-800-788-1813.
American Family Radio.
You're listening to Focal Point with Brian Fisher.
Brian Fisher.
Brian Fisher, welcome back. Focal Point Network, American Family Radio Network. By the way, I'm looking up at the monitor, Mark Zuckerberg testifying before the Senate. 44 senators are going to have a whack at him today, and he's on the hot seat there. You know, and the reason he's on the hot seat is that the Donald Trump campaign purchased some information from Cambridge Analytica. And Cambridge Analytica, or Facebook maybe flubbed and released personal information on 87 million users. But nobody cared on the left until he did this to Donald Trump, until Donald Trump was able to use the information from Facebook and work it into his campaign, which he probably didn't do. He might have used some information from Cambridge Analytica, real questionable whether they actually made any active use of Facebook information. But don't forget, they shoved this information, Facebook did, to Donald Trump to Barack Obama back in 2012. I mean, they literally shoved it at him. They gave him access to all of the treasures in their vault, all the personal information on everybody, and that's not gotten one single last bit of attention. Here's a story that might crack you up. The biggest Black Lives Matter Facebook is fake. It surfaced today that it's run by an Australian trade union organizer. Now, he's been suspended because he ran this fake Black Lives Matter Facebook page and siphoned off hundreds of thousands of dollars in donations. He's got almost 700,000 followers, which dwarfs the size of the authentic Black Lives Matter Facebook page, and solicited more than $100,000 in donations. So, I mean, all kind of problems with Facebook here, if a guy can get away with that. All right, let's go to the phones and talk about this whole Trump business. Let's go to Diane in Tampa. Diane, welcome. What's on your mind? Talk to me.
Yes, I think that Mueller should have recused himself months ago, and I think Sessions should too, and the whole group, and I think Trump should fire them all. You got your client attorney privileges, and they broke them all. They went in and broke every client attorney privilege, and if Trump fires them all, I think he's got the right to do it.
He'd certainly be justified. I think a lot of people would agree with you, Diane. And, Diane makes a good point about the way in which attorney-client privileges has been absolutely shredded in this raid because Michael Cohen only has one client. So the only attorney-client privilege that exists in his world is the one that he has with Donald Trump. And this raid completely shredded that and trashed that. Excuse me. Now, there is a provision in law that if you have evidence that an attorney is using his attorney-client communication to commit a crime, then his communication is not protected because he's using it to commit a crime. But you've got to have evidence of that. You've got to have evidence that would satisfy a judge because this is an extremely serious thing to do. I mean, in the legal world, this is sacrosanct in the legal world. So you start tampering with attorney-client privilege, and they get away with this. I mean, it is Katie bar the door. I mean, there is no telling where this could go if you can trample on attorney-client privilege this way, apparently finding a friendly judge who would sign off on this warrant. This judge apparently wants to get Trump as bad as Mueller does, and there you have it. All right, Diane, very good call. Let's grab a call from Rosemary in Hot Springs, Arkansas. Rosemary, what's on your mind?
Hi there, Mr. Fisher.
Howdy.
I am 76 years old, and I have never been so heartsick as I am now about what is going on in our country and our government. I feel that we were not ignorant when we elected President Trump. We knew his past. We were impressed with this man and what he was promising to do for us. And now I'm wondering where our senators and our representatives are, that they are sitting back, not defending our president, not coming to his help. And I feel that it's not going to be very long until some of these guys are going to be wanting to run for president. And who is going to have their back and stand up for them when the time comes?
Mm-hmm. Well, that's a very good question. And you make an observation I really hadn't paid that much attention to, but you're right, Rosemary. There's virtually nobody in the Congress that has the president's back on this. Nobody's got his back. So he's fighting this thing all by himself. All right, Rosemary, great call. And I agree with Rosemary. This is a time to be heartsick. If you're heartsick of what's going on in our country, and this thing is just kind of the latest thing. I mean, this is alarming, ladies and gentlemen. This is alarming. The shredding of attorney-client privilege, going after the president's attorney, going into his office, raiding his office, taking all of the correspondence that he's had with Donald Trump since forever. He's been his attorney for decades. So now they're going to go pawing through all of this confidential information. Now, apparently, it's supposed to be screened by somebody. Somebody's supposed to look at this first and make sure that the attorney-client privilege is protected, that only documents or communication that has to do with a crime are transmitted. But that means they're going to have to look at everything. What if they come across something they think looks a little hinky? I mean, somebody's been in business for 30 years, probably everybody with the magnitude of the kind of business deals that Donald Trump has been in, has done something that could be misconstrued as a violation of something or other. There's so many forms and so many regulations that have to be satisfied. Wouldn't be surprising. And so they're going to be combing through all of his attorney-client information with that maybe involves communication where they're working through one of these problems. And it could be leaked. I mean, who doesn't trust these guys are going to look at this stuff, not to leak it. If they find something juicy, they're going to leak it. So I'd say, it is just a sad deal. And it makes it very clear as we talked about yesterday, the goal here is to get Trump. These guys don't want justice. They want Trump. Well, let's go to William in Georgia. William, what's on your mind? Talk to me.
Hey, bro, Brian. Two things really quick. First of all, I just wanted to tell you how much I appreciate you and your tenor being on the air and everything, and what your testimony is as far as like the low percentage rate of people that survive what you went through. It's quite obvious you're here for a reason. That's the first thing I want to say. Okay, I want to appreciate you for that.
Thank you very much.
And the second thing is, as far as this full investigation that Bob Mueller been lingering for so long with, it's quite obvious that the Lord is allowing this to happen, because what's going to end up happening is he's just revealing the corruption to the American people. And so what they do is not going to prosper anyway, because there are prayers that are going out for President Trump already. So no matter what they try to do, all they're doing is making themselves look less credible, them and as well as the rest of the leftist people that are working behind the scenes doing this corruption.
Well, it's entirely possible, William. I mean, people have wondered about Mueller's overreach in this deal. Like Rand Paul says, what does any of this have to do with Russia? What is Paul Manafort doing business with a Ukrainian president in 2013? What in the world does that have to do with Russia? Because he's supposed to be investigating the campaign. Got nothing to do with the campaign. So what's Mueller doing going so far off the reservation? And so maybe maybe Mueller will fall into the pit that he's dug for others. The Proverbs are full of that kind of analogy. People dig in a pit for somebody else and they fall into it themselves. So we might even want to pray that would happen to Robert Mueller. Let's go to Terry in Mississippi. Terry, what's on your mind? Talk to me.
Yes, sir, Brian. Here's what I believe. I believe that they've got something hidden on Mueller, and his gang's got some stuff hidden, and that's the reason they're slow-walking these documents to the investigative committee of the House. And he's trying to get Trump before Trump can get him. I think he's getting desperate. I think Mueller's getting desperate, and his crew I think they're getting desperate, and I think it's fixing to come to a pop, come to a head, and I think there's some stuff hidden in those documents if they can ever get them before the time runs out, and I think they're trying to hold out to these midterm elections. So that's my thoughts on it. I just want to hear what your thoughts are.
That's a good observation, Terry, and we don't have time right now, but in the second hour, I'm going to play some sound from Mark Meadows where they agree with you. The FBI is slow-walking this thing. They want to know why. They don't know why. I mean, your suspicion is as good as anybody else's that they're trying to conceal something, they're trying to hide something, they're trying to protect somebody. And see, this is Rosenstein's deal. This is Rosenstein's doing. And he's not turning over these documents. Now, they're assigning more agents to go through the stuff that they have to screen or vet first. But, they're actually talking in the House, at least, seriously about impeaching Rod Rosenstein because he's been so uncooperative with them. Well, let's go to Warner Robins, Georgia, and talk to Joshua. Joshua, welcome. What's on your mind?
Thank you, sir. May I come on board and man your 50 caliber machine gun?
You bet. Permission to come aboard granted. Man your battle station, sailor.
All right. Thank you, sir. I have a question for you.
Yes, sir.
I'm worried about this whole investigation thing. Do you think Trump will survive this, and how can we see that he does?
Well, that's a good question, Joshua, and I don't know that anybody's got the answer to that because this thing could go in a lot of unpredictable ways. Again, we've seen the lack of support for Donald Trump. If you get some kind of a wave going on the part of the Democrats and the part of Mueller to call for the impeachment of Donald Trump, who knows where that would lead? Who knows where that would go? There may start to get calls for his resignation to compromise to continue as president. That could turn into a cacophony. I mean, the potential here, if they remove Donald Trump in an extra legal way, which is what they are trying to do, if they remove Trump in an extra legal way where there's not grounds for it, they haven't found anything on Donald Trump, nothing that smacks of collusion or anything remotely similar to that, it's going to be a serious problem because there are going to be a lot of people, and I would count myself among them, who are going to have a real big-time problem with that. And who knows where that kind of unrest is going to go if they actually succeed in getting Donald Trump out of office. But there's no question now that is their goal. Focal Point American Family Radio. We'll be right back after the news. Don't go anywhere. Stay with us.
Faith, family, freedom. American Family Radio.
EngageMagazine.net, an online group of millennials brought together by a common goal to share truth, apply scripture, and to get involved in our lost and hurting world. With weekly articles to encourage you in your spiritual walk, EngageMagazine.net hosts discussions that help you apply a biblical worldview to your daily life to make a difference. EngageMagazine.net.
Faith, family, freedom. American Family Radio, a ministry of the American Family Association.
American Family News on the Hour. I'm Chad Groening. President Trump is canceling his planned trip this week to South America. As Fox's John Decker reports from the White House, it's because of Syria.
With a decision likely in the next 24 to 48 hours, President Trump hinted at an imminent military strike against Syria, vowing to respond forcefully to Saturday's apparent chemical weapons attack on civilians.
It will be met, and it will be met forcefully. And when, I will not say, because I don't like talking about timing.
In position to carry out any attack order, the U.S. Navy destroyer, the USS Donald Cook, which is currently in the eastern Mediterranean after completing a port call in Cyprus. The guided missile destroyer is armed with Tomahawk cruise missiles. At the White House, John Decker, Fox News.
People can't stop talking about the FBI raiding the offices of Donald Trump's longtime attorney, Michael Cohen. The events are believed to be in connection to claims from an adult film star that she had relations with Donald Trump in 2006, an encounter that Trump's attorney reportedly paid her to stay silent. Speaking on AFR's Today's Issues program, AFA legal counsel Abraham Hamilton III called the raids a startling development, one that brings into question attorney-client privilege.
A search warrant was used, so what literally has to happen is that you have a law enforcement agency, most likely the FBI in this scenario from the Southern District of New York. They have a probable cause affidavit that they submit to a judge somewhere. A judge would have to sign off on that, which says that it's more likely than not that there's evidence of a crime that would allow these law enforcement agencies to seize whatever information. Historically, however, that would stop at the gate of attorney-client privilege.
Hamilton went on to say that the lack of criticism from the ACLU and civil libertarians is amazing hypocrisy.
Salacious affairs, that stuff is sinful, it's wicked, it's disgusting. I don't want anybody to misconstrue me as saying that. But in terms of the law, if you have a person who accepts money in exchange for an agreement that they willingly and voluntarily enter, that is not a criminal offense.
AFA legal counsel Abraham Hamilton III. Some National Guard members have started arriving at the U.S.-Mexico border with more expected as federal government officials seek ways to curtail illegal immigration. Republican governors of Texas, Arizona, and New Mexico committed 1,600 Guard members to the border on Monday. That gives President Donald Trump many of the troops he requested to fight what he calls a crisis of illegal alien crossings and crime. A ministry that aids victims of natural disasters continues to grow. AFN's Chris Woodward has details.
Having just returned from helping people deal with Hurricane Harvey in Houston, Texas, 8 Days of Hope is now opening facilities near Buffalo, New York, and Cedar Rapids, Iowa, in addition to a new property near Tupelo, Mississippi, where 8 Days of Hope is headquartered. 8 Days of Hope leader Steve Tiber had this to say on AFR's Focal Point program.
On July 1st, God has opened up a door for us to receive a gift of a 100,000 square foot building in Buffalo, New York, my hometown. January 1st, we're going to open up in Cedar Rapids, Iowa.
If and when disasters occur in those regions of the country, 8 Days of Hope will be able to use and dispense building supplies and other materials housed in those locations.
We'll be based out of Tupelo. We're not changing that. We're going to be based out of Tupelo, but we'll have a northeastern hub out of Buffalo, a midwest hub out of Cedar Rapids, and our hope and goal is 2020 be out west.
8 Days of Hope began in 2005 after Hurricane Katrina. It grew so much in the following years that a rapid response team known as Hope Reigns was created. The recent visits to Houston were the largest missions to date. Thousands of people from across the U.S. and several nations showed up to serve. I'm Chris Woodward.
Facebook has begun alerting some users that their data was swept up in the Cambridge Analytica scandal. A notification that appeared on Facebook for some users Tuesday told them that, quote, one of your friends used Facebook to log into a now-banned personality quiz app called This Is Your Digital Life. Facebook has said as many as 87 million users were affected. And that is American Family News on the Hour. I'm Chad Groney.
Women and men alike find themselves in despair after an abortion. Every woman who had an abortion was for a short time a mother, every man a father. But afterwards, they're all people in pain, anger, sadness, relationship problems. These often accompany an abortion. But there is hope. Call 866-482-LIFE. Your call is confidential, and you'll be talking with someone who has already been where you are and found the way out. 866-482-LIFE.
This is a very dangerous day today for lawyer-client relations.
They raid an office of a personal attorney early in the morning. This is the most conflicted group of people I've ever seen. The Attorney General made a terrible mistake when he recused himself. Why don't I just fire Mueller? Many people have said you should fire him. This is a pure and simple witch hunt.
This may be an attempt to squeeze Cohen. He's the lawyer. He's the guy who knows all the facts about Donald Trump, and to get him to turn against his client. But if this were Hillary Clinton being investigated and they went into her lawyer's office, the ACLU would be on every television station in America jumping up and down. The deafening silence of the ACLU is really appalling.
Freedom prospers when religion is vibrant and the rule of law under God is acknowledged. An informed patriot is what we want.
Welcome to American Family Radio's Focal Point, the home of muscular Christianity on conservative talk radio.
Muscular Christianity.
Where we relentlessly explore the intersection of truth and politics.
The trouble with our liberal friends is not that they're ignorant. It's just that they know so much that isn't so.
Now, here's your host, Brian Fisher.
Welcome back to Focal Point, second hour. Glad to have you in the conversation, whether you're live streaming us on Facebook, live streaming us on YouTube. Don't forget, we record the program as it's streaming on Facebook. We upload it to the Facebook page after the program, publish it with an extensive table of contents so you can find your way around the program. Share it with others on your timeline. You may be listening to us audio streaming at afr.net through your computer, one of our 184 stations where you can listen live. You may use the iPhone app or the Android app to listen on the go. And again, you may use the podcast option, which a lot of people use. Thousands of people use the podcast option to keep track with us. You can listen to us at your leisure. One quick item before we go back to the phone lines is Pope Francis talked quite a bit about Satan over the weekend, apparently stung by the report that he said hell does not exist. Now, the Vatican has had to scramble to kind of undo the damage, and the Pope apparently is claiming that he was misquoted by this journalist. He said that hell doesn't exist, there isn't any kind of eternal punishment, that people just kind of disappear. Good people continue to live, and those that are evil and never repented of their sins just kind of disappear. Not what the Bible teaches. In fact, most of what we know about hell, we know from the teachings of Jesus. He taught us more about hell than anybody else in the Bible. And remember, as Jesus taught us, it's a place of weeping and wailing and gnashing of teeth. And the clear implication in the scriptures is that existence is an ongoing thing in hell. And there's a suffering that continues on and on throughout all of eternity, which is why we appeal to people. I appeal to you right now. If you've ever made a decision to surrender your life to Christ, do it today, because you do not want to experience the pain and the suffering of hell, and plus you want to be in the presence of God and in the kind of world that he is going to create. In fact, his followers are going to help him run it. So you ever wanted to get into politics, here's your chance. Become a follower of Christ, follow him faithfully, and who knows what awaits for you as an assignment on the other side. Here's a winnable war moment just to get us off to a quick start the second hour. There's a website called Backpage. It's a personal ads website, and it was shut down by federal authorities over the weekend. It's the leading website for prostitution, and it's the leading website for sex traffickers who advertised children on this website. On Backpage.com, the federal authorities seized the website, invaded the offices. They've shut this thing down. And they had evidence that the employees of Backpage had altered key words in postings to remove language that was indicative of criminality, including posts advertising child sex trafficking. So those posts escaped scrutiny, and they would use different code words, even use some emojis to let people reading the website to know exactly what they were talking about. But anyway, the Pope talked about hell over the weekend, mentioning Satan 12 times and mentioning hell once. He kind of quotes James 3. We see how the unguarded tongue set on fire by hell sets all things ablaze. So he at least made an allusion. He quoted from the scriptures that refer to hell. But at least he recognized the existence of Satan and gave him his due. All right. Well, let's continue with the program. Back to the content. Let's grab clip number 2. This is Donald Trump. This is the second of 2 sound bites from Donald Trump's initial reaction yesterday in the White House. The first one that we played is his climbing Jeff Sessions frame again, accusing him of doing a terrible disservice, terrible mistake for the country by recusing himself from this investigation. I don't think Jeff Sessions did anything wrong here. I think it was a good faith decision on his part. I mean, who could have known how renegade Bob Mueller was going to be? Who could have known that Rod Rosenstein would pick a partisan zealot? That's what Alan Dershowitz used to describe Bob Mueller. We played the soundbite yesterday. He is a partisan and he is a zealot, and he has been horribly wrong before. We saw yesterday that he had a confidential informant in a case that involved Whitey Bulger, who was a known hitman for the mob, and Mueller allowed 4 guys to go to prison who were innocent because he wanted to protect Bulger as a confidential source. 2 of those guys died while they were in prison. That's on Mueller's head. I mean, that just beggars the imagination that somebody who was supposed to be an agent of justice would engineer something like that. And we saw in that anthrax case back in the early 2000s how Mueller put the wrong guy in jail, picked a guy that had no experience with bacteriology and put him in jail for anthrax, which is a bacteriological deal. And they finally got the right guy, and Mueller had to admit they had the wrong guy, had him behind bars for a while. So Mueller is not a Boy Scout. So anyway, here is Donald Trump, and you sense his growing level of agitation here in this clip.
Why don't I just fire Mueller? Well, I think it's a disgrace what's going on. We'll see what happens, but I think it's really a sad situation when you look at what happened. And many people have said you should fire him. Again, they found nothing. And in finding nothing, that's a big statement. If you know the person who's in charge of the investigation, you know all about that, Deputy Rosenstein, Rod Rosenstein. He wrote the letter very critical of Comey. One of the things I said, I fired Comey. Well, I turned out to do the right thing because you look at all of the things that he's done and the lies, and you look at what's gone on at the FBI with the insurance policy and all of the things that happened. Turned out I did the right thing. But he signed, as you know, he also signed the FISA warrant. So Rod Rosenstein, who's in charge of this, signed a FISA warrant, and he also signed a letter that was essentially saying to fire James Comey. And he was right about that. He was absolutely right. So we'll see what happens. I think it's disgraceful, and so does a lot of other people. This is a pure and simple witch hunt.
You know, it's interesting that Donald Trump fingers Rosenstein, which I think is really where his anger ought to be directed rather than at Jeff Sessions. Then look, they haven't found anything. That is a big statement. And he mentions Rod Rosenstein signed a FISA warrant. Now, Rod Rosenstein, that means Rod Rosenstein is a witness or possibly even a subject in this investigation. Has to be, because he wrote that letter to Trump talking about why it'd be a good idea for him to fire James Comey. That came from Rod Rosenstein justifying the firing of James Comey. Well, James Comey is going to be part of the deal in this thing, is going to be central, because they're investigating Trump for why he fired James Comey. And Rod Rosenstein is hip deep into that deal. I mean, he's a witness or a subject or something. He should be nowhere near this thing. He should have been recused from day one. But he's trucking right along, doing as much damage as he can possibly do on the way, and he signed a FISA warrant. He signed a FISA warrant that extended the surveillance on Donald Trump. Rod Rosenstein did that. He, by his own signature, extended one of these FISA warrants that was based on that completely bogus dossier that was completely unverified. Even James Comey said it was salacious and unverified, yet Rod Rosenstein now, who's basically running this entire Russian investigation, he was the one that signed off on that warrant to go ahead and surveil Donald Trump and his entire campaign. We'll be back. Stay with us. Focal Point, American Family Radio.
The influence of media is so very powerful over a person.
American Family Association and the family of Anna Bright want to warn you about the Netflix program 13 Reasons Why.
I really feel in my heart with all my soul that that show contributed to her passing.
After binge-watching Season 1 of 13 Reasons Why, 14-year-old Anna Bright committed suicide in the same manner depicted on the show.
To portray suicide, first of all, as an option is not a good thing. To portray it graphically, it leaves you vulnerable to the enemy's attack, which I think it definitely did for our daughter.
She took a permanent solution to a temporary situation.
Help protect our teens by signing the AFA petition urging Netflix to pull Season 1 and cancel the upcoming Season 2 of 13 Reasons Why. You can see Anna's story and sign the petition at afa.net. That's afa.net.
I would like to give a hearty thumbs up and thank Abraham Hamilton III for his spot-on show called The Hamilton Corner. It is intelligent, well-researched. It's a counterpoint to the mainstream propaganda.
I just want to give a shout-out to Abraham Hamilton III. Brother, you are a breath of fresh air, especially during the time slot that I listen to you on my way home from work.
Hi, this is Abraham Hamilton III, and it really blows me away to hear how God is using the Hamilton Corner and all the other programs on American Family Radio. He's doing an amazing work here. That's why I'm glad to have an opportunity to ask you to partner with us financially during our 3-day share-a-thon starting Tuesday, April 17th.
God bless you. Keep up the good work.
Hamilton, keep on doing what you are doing. It's much appreciated.
This is Focal Point with Brian Fisher
on American Family Radio.
Howdy, and welcome back to Focal Point with Brian Fisher, the home of muscular Christianity on Conservative Talk Radio. You're listening to Focal Point on the American Family Radio Network. Welcome, glad you are here. I have 3 special guests in the studio, the Focal Point studio here. To my right is Bert Harper, and Bert, I would have no possible way to remember your exact title here, so I'm going to ask you to do that.
I appreciate it. It is Director of Marriage, Family, and Pastoral Ministries.
Okay, like I said, no way I would have remembered that. But Bert, he and Alex McFarland host the program that comes on immediately after Focal Point at 3 Exploring the Word. So I encourage you to stay tuned for that with Bert and Alex. Now, Bert, one of the things you've done is you're heading up our pastoral ministry, as your title indicates. And one of the things that you have done in trying to reach out to pastors on behalf of the American Family Association, because we value pastors. We have hundreds of churches that are involved in our network that support us, and we want to support them. We want to come to their aid. It's a tough job. I've been a pastor, was for 25 years. You were for 20 or 30 plus or something.
Yeah, keep on going.
Yeah, and it's a tough assignment, and we understand that pastors can they get beat up pretty good in the ministry, and so we want to come alongside them. And you develop these Fishbowl retreats. So tell us why you picked that name, number one, and then tell us what the purpose of these Fishbowl retreats is.
My wife, Jan, is a vital part, just like Debbie is with yours. And she was saying it's hard enough to be a wife, but being a minister's wife is just added to it. While she was learning to be a wife, and she was also a pastor's wife, she said, we need to do something about this. And we started talking, and we came up with the idea. It's like living in a fishbowl. That's not original with us. And we said, let's do something. We'd gone to conferences on how to pray, how to develop sermons, how to be a leader. And I said, man, pastors need one on how to live in a fishbowl. And we just started talking about all the things that had helped us, put those together, found a place to have 9 other couples besides us. And then Don Wildman, president of AFA, founder of AFA at that time, he gave us the money to invite 9 couples to this Fishbowl retreat, and they were guinea pigs, and it worked. And those folks went away saying, man, this is good. So about 6.5 years ago, when I came on board at AFA full-time, they said, bring Fishbowl with you. And now we're doing Fishbowl on a bigger scale. You don't want it too big. You lose a lot of the intimacy, and it gets too big, so we're limited it to 35 couples, and it works real good that way. It's small enough to get to know, but big enough to not feel like I'm isolated. So it's 35 couples, and that's how it came about.
Well, you know, like I mentioned, I was a pastor myself for 25 years, and I remember in first clue I had about what I was in for was in seminary, and we had classes on being pastors and stuff like that, and hints and practical pointers and stuff. And one of the professors one day said that your wife should not have a friend in the congregation. And I just completely rejected that. Well, there's no way we're going for that. But then we get into ministry, and I understand why. I still don't agree with that advice, but I can understand.
You understand
why.
Somebody that's brave enough to be their friend.
Yeah.
You know, because they're going to be, you know, looked at, said, what are they doing? You know, they think everybody has ulterior motives. But there are some people with nothing but pure hearts. The way that Nathaniel, Jesus said, there's no guile in him. Don't you love folks that way that have pure hearts? And if you found somebody in your church that's got a pure heart, just wants to be your friend,
absolutely,
what a treasure.
You know, and I remember also what I discovered in ministry. Let's say I have a church of 400 people. What I discovered, if you got a church of 400 people, there are 400 job descriptions out there.
No matter what's written.
And you don't even know, you don't even know what's in those job descriptions, but you are being held accountable for every last little detail of their job descriptions. That's a tough thing, tough drill to satisfy 400 people.
And I found out whatever's the most important thing to those 400 people, it should be the most important thing for you as well.
Yeah,
it's hard to have 400 most important things,
right? Yeah.
And it is a difficult task, but it is a rewarding task, and that's what you get at Fishbowl. You're not getting the old me's, but you're getting encouragement, you're getting relationships, and hopefully, you know, you're doing it because the Lord has equipped you to do it, called you to do it, and He'll give you what you need in order to do it.
So the Fishbowl Retreat is this year, October 9 through 11 at the Linden Valley Conference Center in Linden, Tennessee. You were describing the location.
Oh,
Bert.
it's beautiful.
Like just a beautiful spot.
It is. Matter of fact, the guests who are with us today, they're the ones that told us about this. We were having it in Tupelo in a hotel, and it retreat in a hotel just doesn't make a lot of sense. So we found this retreat center, and it's on the Buffalo River, right in the foothills of the Appalachian Mountains. In October, it's not quite ready for the leaves to completely turn, but they're starting to turn, and it is beautiful.
And if you'd like more information, I would encourage you, if you're a deacon or you're an elder, I think the time right now is to start thinking about sending your pastor. October is Pastor Appreciation Month, so take advantage of that opportunity to send your pastor and his wife to the Fishbowl Retreat. If you'd like to get more information about it, you can call 662-844-5036, extension 300. That's 662-844-5036, extension 300. You'll talk with Barbara Coggan, whom I know well. You talk to Barbara, tell her that I said nice things about her, and she'll take care of getting you all set up with the information you need. You can also register online by going to repairingthefoundations.net, repairingthefoundations.net. That's the website that Bert has developed to reach out to pastors. Again, beautiful location. It's in October, Pastor Appreciation Month, so think about that. And give Barbara Coggan a call at 662-844-5036, extension 300. Bert, one last question before I go to our special guests. Is there a theme for this year's Fishbowl Retreat?
The ups and downs. We've got a pastor coming, another pastor coming, and he's going to share his journey of difficulty, of hardship, depression, and the doctor's going to come along that helped him diagnose, and the doctor's going to give some high points of seeing, burnout, depression, and giving you those warning points. So it's more than here. Yeah. And J.J. Jasper is going to be our guest as well, he and Melanie, and his story, and it should be great. It should be great, Brian.
Yeah. All right, terrific. So don't forget that. It's October 9 through 11. Call Barbara Coggin, 662-844-5036, extension 300, or go to repairingthefoundations.net. And also with us here in our studio today is Brent and Mandy Colley. Brent, welcome. Mandy, welcome to Focal Point with Brian Fisher.
Thank you very much.
Well, let's begin by talking about, you're obviously connected to Bert. You're in this studio talking to me because you have some kind of connection with Bert and the Fishbowl ministry. So tell us how you guys got connected to Bert in the first place.
Well, we were some of the lucky guinea pigs that he talked about that was on the first Fishbowl retreat. He invited Mandy and I. We were newlyweds, had only been married a year, and were serving the church already. So he took us there. We were graduated college with his son, so we were connected that way as well. But we loved the retreat. It was great for us. It's the first thing we'd ever been to like that as a married couple or as serving in ministry. And how many years later? 10 years later? More than 10 years later now, to go as having a few miles under us, a few things under our belt, a few experiences in life and ministry, and to go now and to serve in this retreat, to serve pastors and serve their wives also it's just a great blessing, full circle.
All right. So, Mandy, you and Brent have become kind of part of the team that kind of hosts these Fishbowl retreats. So what do you and Brent do at these retreats?
We do whatever is necessary. We love Brother Bert and Miss Jan, and every time we've been, we take away more than what we put in, most definitely. But I get to help Miss Jan do the things for the pastors' wives, which is just, it's very rewarding for me, being a minister's wife too. So it's wonderful.
Great.
Brent does our music as well, worship leader.
Talk about that, Brent, a little bit. How did you wind up getting into that role with the Fishbowl retreat?
Well, maybe by default, we had maybe one session that needed something filled in, and I filled in, and it kind of worked out. But at Linden, at the retreat center over there, they have a great meeting room that we meet in the day, and in the evening, they have a chapel there. It's beautiful. It's a beautiful building. It's a great place. We have a worship time at night, and so Brother Bert allowed me just to lead worship with pastors and their wives that come. Again, it's not too many people, so we can be engaged together and just have a great time of worship, and it's unparalleled. There's nothing like it. I've been privileged to be a part of conferences and things for, like Brother Bert said, for prayer, for learning to lead worship better, but there's nothing like the Fishbowl retreat, just for the pastor and his wife to come to a relaxed setting. There's no big shots. There's no little shot. Everybody's just a regular shot there.
Yeah.
And we just
and one of the things you realize, you go to one of these retreats, and I don't know, maybe, Mandy, you felt this, or maybe you see this in the people that come to these retreats. It's like, especially for wives, but it's also true for pastors, when you're sort of on task, it's like you have to be constantly on alert. I mean, it's like you never get a chance to really relax, because if you relax and just kind of let down your guard, something might happen that'll embarrass you, and will get around the church. And also, you're just kind of constantly having to kind of watch yourself and every word and every move, and your kids, you worry about your kids making you look bad. And so it can be pretty stressful because of that pressure that we put on ourselves, but a lot of it's due to the expectations that people in the congregation have. So I'm sure it's got to mean something, and you know a little bit about this, Brent, having been in the ministry, to come to a place where you can just
unplug.
You can just kind of unplug, and you can just exhale and just enjoy other people in ministry, because they identify.
Sure.
They're going to know what you're going through and have a chance to get a little bit of refreshing on the way.
And every year there's somebody there that's, without a doubt, you'll meet somebody that is in the valley. They're in the dumps, and every time, by the end of the 3 days, you can see encouragement. You can see a little light coming back on, a little fire getting back in their belly, and just getting ready to go back and do what God's laid out for them to do. Just give them a little bit of boost of energy. And there's also people there that are on the mountaintop. This retreat will take you wherever you are, and it'll take you even higher.
Yeah.
The program, and JJ and Melanie and Jan and Bert are just obviously great. You all know that very well, but it's a great time of getting away.
Well, everybody there, we have no titles, no reverends, no brothers, no doctors, just Bert, Brent, Jan, Mandy, Brian, Debbie. That's the way we go. And we don't let them sign their own names on their name tag. We do it and make sure they get their first name on them.
All right. Well, again, that is the Fishbowl Retreat, sponsored by our Ministry to Pastors, Repairing the Foundations. You can get more information about it by going to repairingthefoundations.net. You can also call my good friend Barbara Coggan at 662-844-5036, extension 300, and be sure to extend a greeting from me to her when you talk to her. A very good friend of my wife's. They pray together frequently. That's going to be at the Linden Valley Conference Center. It's October 9 through 11, which, remember, October is Pastor Appreciation Month. Great way to show your pastor and his wife a little bit of appreciation. So thank you, Brent and Mandy Colley, for being my special guests. Bert, as always, great pleasure to have you.
Always, brother.
Okay,
always.
And encourage everybody to stick around and listen to Bert and Alex break the word open for you. Back in just about 30 minutes. Be right back.
Are you a responsible person who finds yourself growing deeper and deeper in credit card debt and you're not sure how to fix the problem? Then get ready for a toll-free number that will put you on a path to financial recovery. Trinity Debt Management is a nonprofit organization that will consolidate your accounts into one easy-to-manage monthly payment, put a stop to late fees and over-limit charges, and reduce your interest rates by as much as 60%. You'll save thousands and become debt-free for keeps. It's not a loan. It's a smart way to relieve your stress, meet your obligations, and preserve your self-respect. If your debt has you down, we should talk. Gather up your bills and call this toll-free number for a free, no-obligation debt analysis. 1-800-788-1813. That's 1-800-788-1813. If you're in debt and you need help, call Trinity at 1-800-788-1813.
Isn't that a beautiful sound? That sonogram holds the sound of a baby's heartbeat. Hi, I'm Jim Stanley, General Manager for AFR. We're partnering with the Ministry of Preborn to help save babies' lives. Preborn partners with pregnancy centers throughout America in helping abortion-minded women choose life through ultrasound. By letting a mother hear her baby's heartbeat and see her baby in the womb, she will choose life 80% of the time. Ultrasound is a game changer. For $140, you can provide 5 ultrasounds. All gifts are tax deductible, and 100% of your gift goes to saving babies. You can save a baby's life right here in America by donating to Preborn. To donate, dial pound 250 and say keyword baby. That's pound 250 and say baby. Or donate securely at preborn.com. That's preborn.com. Your love can save a life.
American Family Radio. You're listening to Focal Point with Brian Fisher. Video segments of today's program will be posted at afr.net and on the Focal Point Facebook page. You'll also find the best collection of Brian's resources on our Facebook page. If you're on Twitter, be among the very first every morning to find out what the day's show will be about. Just follow Brian at Brian J. Fisher. Brian J. Fisher.
Hi, and welcome back. Focal Point, Brian Fisher is my name. The program is Focal Point, the network, American Family Radio. I told you last hour that I was going to have some sound for you about what Mark Meadows and some of the others in Congress are preparing to do. And remember, the way impeachment works is the impeachment articles are filed by the House. So articles of impeachment are prepared. They're presented to the House, and if a majority of the members of the House vote for impeachment, then that dude is impeached. And the purpose of impeachment is to provide a means of accountability for elected officials between elections. You got somebody who goes off the rails. It might be a bribery. It might be some other form of corruption. And you need some kind of accountability. You can't wait until the next election. That's what impeachment is for. It's a means of accountability for people that are in federal office. Anybody that is in federal office, has a federal position, can be subject to impeachment. And then the Senate conducts the trial. It's a formal trial, and evidence has to be prepared, the argument has to be made, and then the Senate votes on whether to convict or not. And if they get 2/3 of the Senate to convict, then the individual is not only impeached, but convicted and removed from office. And that's a very high bar, and it ought to be. It ought to be a very high bar to do it, because it's a very, very serious thing to do. So Rosenstein is a federal official, as we mentioned, and impeachment applies to them. Here is Mark Meadows. He's one of the good guys in the House, one of the really, really good guys in the House. He's the leader of the House Freedom Caucus. And remember, what we're talking about here is documents that the DOJ needs to turn over. They've been subpoenaed by the House, and that's what Mark Meadows was talking about. We've asked for them. We've subpoenaed these documents, and there's hundreds of them, thousands of these documents that we need to investigate possible FISA abuse and to investigate what the FBI is doing. A lot of potential misconduct with the FBI. Obviously, we've been talking about Lisa Strzok and Page, and their text between them and wanting to come up with some kind of insurance policy in case Trump gets elected, trying to keep him from getting elected, all that kind of stuff. They got documents there they've asked for that have not been turned over. So here is Mark Meadows talking with Jeanine Pirro on Saturday night. Here's Mark Meadows, clip 7.
I think that if he does not turn over the documents, that there are a growing number of us on Capitol Hill who believe that someone else needs to do the job. And,
all right.
And what happens there is we've got, constitutionally, we have some things that we can do. What I am here to tell you is I'm fed up. I've had enough. My good friend Jim Jordan is fed up. I talked to him earlier today.
All right.
We're going to not only demand answers, but we're going to demand action.
Today is Saturday.
Yeah.
By next Friday, if you don't get what you want?
I think what you'll see is not just Jim and I, but Chairman Nunes, a number of others, will actually go to really those areas that we have within our purview under the Constitution to compel them to actually produce the documents.
And if they don't, how do you get rid of Rosenstein?
Well, I think the first area is really a contempt of Congress, but certainly
when Eric Holder was held in contempt of Congress, nothing happened.
One of the things that we have at a tool in our toolbox is impeachment.
All right, so he says, look, and that's Jeanine Pirro's point. Eric Holder was held in contempt of Congress. I think the only attorney general ever to be held in contempt of Congress, but nothing happened. There was no discipline. It was a nothing burger. And Mark Meadows said, no, we're going way past that if we need to. We are willing to file articles of impeachment against Rod Rosenstein so he could get taken out of office for not turning over documents to this House Intelligence Committee. And that would take him completely off the field of play. Let's see. Let me look at what I've got in the stack here. We got a couple of the sound bites I want to get to here in just a minute. Mark Zuckerberg is testifying right now. Looking at him up there, my senator, or one of my two senators, Roger Wicker, is grilling him right now. Mark Zuckerberg in a coat and tie, wearing a suit today.
He looks a little uncomfortable in it.
Boy, he does. I mean, a T-shirt is the dressiest he ever gets. But Zuckerberg, by the way, is not under oath. It's typical for witnesses in a situation like this not to be sworn in, but they do have a legal obligation to tell the truth. They can be subject to penalties if they don't tell the truth. I got 44 senators today are going to have a crack at the Zuckerberg. He's going to be back tomorrow to do the same thing all over again with the House. You know, we talk about the censorship and how language is being distorted and twisted. The Scottish National Party is providing guidance for their schools over there, and they're saying two words that are offensive. Number one, the phrase British values. They argue that could inspire terror attacks because people would think British values are superior to Islamic values, and so they're going to want to punish you for saying that. That's the thinking that's going on there. And they're also saying the word Islamist is a bad word to use for somebody who commits jihad in the name of Allah, because, again, that could be problematic. And so they put these offensive terms next to terms that are appropriate. Instead of British values, you are supposed to say shared values, because that would not cause offense. And I forgot, I completely overlooked even talking about my column. I got to do that now. A couple of other quick things. Washington Post gave Nancy Pelosi 2 Pinocchios for saying that middle-class Americans are going to see higher taxes under Trump. Washington Post said when she said that was a lie. 2 Pinocchios. And Sean Hannity has apparently accepted Jimmy Kimmel's apology. It was kind of a pro forma apology. I apologize if anybody was offended. Now let me talk about my column here. And Jeff, could you check and see if that is up at afa.net? The column that I wrote is entitled, "We Are at War."
It is.
And I mean that very seriously. That column is up at afa.net. We are at war. We are involved in a civil war over the values that are going to govern our common life together as a culture and as a society. And I'm looking at an article here by Peter Layden and Rui Texera, and they talk about this. They say, look, America is hopelessly divided. America is so divided over values and worldview. They are so divided that there's no possible way to bridge that gap. There's no longer a bipartisan solution to our problems. There's no longer an opportunity even for bipartisan cooperation. We are so polarized, so severely polarized, that we've separated into two camps, conservatives and progressives. I call them regressives because they're not taking us forward. They're taking us back to the dark ages. But there are two parties in America right now, two groups in our culture. There are the regressives that want to take us back to failed liberal policies and socialist policies of generations ago. And then there are the conservatives who want to conserve the ideals and the values on which America was founded. And these guys are saying, look, these camps are so far apart now, and I agree with them. I agree with this analysis. These camps are so far apart, there's no common ground between them. They are at war with each other. Now, it's a war that doesn't use bullets, it uses words, but it is a war nonetheless, a civil war, a rhetorical war, and these guys are saying one side or the other has to win. That's the only way this thing is going to get resolved. Either the regressives, and of course he's rooting for regressives to win, they have to win, vanquish the Republicans. He's saying, what we have to do to conservatives, we got to do to conservatives what California did to them. The Republican Party now is just a non-factor in California. Every statewide office is held by a Democrat. 3/4 of the seats in Congress are held by Democrats. Both senators are Democrats. And the House and the legislature is 60% Democrat. They've got a supermajority, or maybe closer to 70%. The point is they've got a veto-proof majority. They can pass anything they want. They can ram it through, and the Republicans just don't have enough presence in the state legislature to do anything about it. So that's why they say, look, at some point, well, let me back up. Two different political cultures already at odds through different political ideologies, philosophies, and worldview can get trapped in a polarizing process. Polarizing, that's from the North Pole and the South Pole. So basically what he's saying, if you viewed the world of worldviews that way, you got half of the people in America, they're up at the North Pole, the other half are at the South Pole. And there's no connection between them. There's this chasm, this gap between them. And this polarizing process increasingly undermines compromise. They see the world through different lenses, consume different media, and literally live in different places. At some point, one side or the other must win, and win big. The side resisting change, usually the one most rooted in the past systems and incumbent interest, by which he's thinking of us, must be thoroughly defeated. So realize now, this is the goal of regressive. This is the goal of people on the left. They don't just want to debate us. They don't want to present their point of view and let's have a vote and then we'll go with whatever the decision is made. They want to exterminate us. They want to defeat us. They want to silence us. They want to marginalize us. They want to thoroughly, as he said, they want to thoroughly defeat us so that we as conservatives, especially as conservative Christians, that we are as irrelevant in America everywhere. We're as irrelevant in all 50 states as the Democrats are in the state of California. They hold out California as paradise. We want all of America to be paradise. Well, think about California for a second. California has 1/3 of all of the people on welfare in the entire country. 1/3 of all the people that are on welfare live in California. You've got more homeless people living in California than anywhere else. Taxes are higher. Housing costs are higher. So California is not a state to imitate, but they think it's some kind of paradise because regressives are ruling the roost. Now think of the things that we believe in that they don't, because our challenge is to stand for these values, to refuse to apologize for them, to refuse to back away from them, to refuse to back up, but to stand firm in the evil day. We are living in an evil day, and the Bible says God has given us the whole armor of God so that we can stand firm in the evil day. We believe in God and the importance of publicly acknowledging God in all of our institutions. They do not. We believe unapologetically in the superiority of Christianity and religious freedom. They do not. We believe in the sanctity of every human life from conception until natural death. They do not. We believe exclusively in marriage as God has defined it. They do not. They believe that two men or two women can form a marriage. So once again, this is a binary option. One either believes in natural marriage or he doesn't. We believe there are just two genders, two sexes, male and female. They do not. We believe in smaller government. They believe in bigger government. We believe in lower taxes and less regulation. They believe in higher and more. We believe in self-reliance. They believe in reliance on government programs. Back with your calls.
On the next Today's Issues.
Walker Wildman is handling our Facebook presence in the world.
Yeah, if you have a Facebook account, just type in Today's Issues in your search bar, and then our page will pop up. And you can watch the show there every day, or you can view all the articles that we talk about.
Right, but you can also be our friend.
Don't miss the next Today's Issues. Weekday mornings at 11 Eastern, 10 Central on American Family Radio, and on Facebook.
The sexual revolution has falsely promised to satisfy the human heart. The promise of freedom has turned out to be a new kind of bondage.
Here's the good news. God has a better way. If we follow God's prescription.
Dr. Michael Brown offers hope for those trapped in the downward spiral of sexual immorality. The Freedom of Sexual Purity is a powerful DVD from the AFA Cultural Institute. Get your copy today at afastore.net.
Okay, so the big question for any decision you're going to make, is this actually going to work? Well, if you've heard about MediShare, which is a brilliant way of sharing healthcare costs, you may have wondered that. Does it work? Well, so did Dr. Stuart Hoover, who initially joined to save a lot of money. The typical family saves about $500 a month. Stuart saved even more.
When we first joined MediShare, we were immediately going from a little over $1,600 a month down to $460 basically a month.
So that's wonderful, but then his wife needed emergency surgery and the bills added up to $160,000.
So we were seeing the bills coming in, and then the bills were being paid. Portions were being shared, and the end result of this is this bill was taken care of.
Yes, MediShare works, and it's so easy to get your questions answered too, so why not? You can call right now, 855-PSALM-23. That's 855-PSALM-23. 855-PSALM-23.
American Family Radio. You're listening to Focal Point with Brian Fisher. Focal Point. Brian Fisher.
Welcome back. Number to call if you want to join our conversation in this last segment is 888-589-8840, 888-589-8840. Give us a call and join our conversation. Just to finish up on my column, I'm feeding off of this column by somebody on the left who doesn't agree with anything that we believe in. In fact, they want to exterminate our point of view. The things that we believe in, the importance of acknowledging God, the superiority of Christianity, religious freedom, self-reliance, marriage as God has defined it, the sanctity of life, the number of genders and sexes there are. They are virulently, vitriolically opposed to what we believe. And they want our point of view not just to be disagreed with, but to be destroyed. They want us to be eliminated as a cultural force. So we are engaged, ladies and gentlemen, in a cultural war. And let me say this, it is a spiritual war. We are locked in spiritual warfare with the forces of darkness. Where do these things, where does Islam come from? It comes from the darkness. It comes from the kingdom of Satan. Where does abortion come from? It comes from the kingdom of Satan. Where does homosexuality come from? It comes from the kingdom of Satan. Where does the refusal to acknowledge God come from? Well, who hates God more than Satan? Nobody. So this is a matter of spiritual warfare. You know, and the scripture tells us that we have the armor in God that's sufficient for us to stand firm in the evil day, and that's what I'm calling us all to do, to stand firm for these things that we believe in every conversation. We don't have to be belligerent. We don't have to be unpleasant, but we do have to be firm, fixed, and steadfast. No retreat. No surrender. We're going to fight on the beaches. We're going to fight on the landing fields. We're going to fight in the streets, as Winston Churchill said, in order to protect and defend our values, because these values are the values that made America great. And we will perish as a culture without these values. You know, and there are some pretty powerful people on the left. I mean, the CEO of Twitter, his name is Jack Dorsey. He tweeted out a link to this article. This is a great read. You got to read this. This is the guy that is shadow banning Ted Cruz. So Ted Cruz will send out tweets and nobody reads it because they basically have kept most of his followers from even seeing his tweets. Mark Zuckerberg testifying on Capitol Hill. He banned Diamond and Silk, said they were unsafe for the community. You can believe those two ladies. They couldn't harm a flea. And they're unsafe for the community, so they have to be banned. So you got a lot of powerful and a lot of very rich people who are on the other side. They're fighting with the regressives. And it's time for us to armor up. It's time for us, ladies and gentlemen, to recognize how serious the other side is, to silence our message, to confine us, to restrict us, and eventually to exterminate us. We must push back hard against the darkness rather than meekly surrender. It is long past time for all of us to take up the whole armor of God that we may be able to stand firm in the evil day. Ephesians 6:13, there no longer is any place in the body of Christ for the summer soldier and the sunshine patriot. It is an evil day, and we are fighting for everything that matters. And the column is up at afa.net. Encourage you to give us a call. The number is 888-589-8840. A couple of quick sound bites I just got to wedge in because they are important in this issue, what's going on up with Donald Trump. Here's Bill Kristol, clip number 3. He's a never-Trumper. He's the editor of the Weekly Standard, but you know, I use the illustration of this going thermonuclear. Here's how Bill Kristol describes how the whole issue has been ratcheted up here.
And this is a huge escalation. They obviously can't use privileged documents. They'll have to set those aside. They'll be reviewed by, as I understand it, a third party reviews them, and they set aside what's privileged and not. But this is war. I mean, I believe this shows that we're very close now to the end game. You do not go bust in get us a judge to give you a warrant to search the president's personal lawyer's office unless you think you are close to the end of this. You are getting important information. The president is now going to go to war against him. If the president has ever thought about trying to fire Mueller or pardon people, this is the moment where it goes to the very front of his mind.
So Bill Kristol says, look, this is war. Mueller has just declared open war on Donald Trump. Remember, Trump said, you hit me, I'm going to punch you back 10 times as hard. So we're getting ready for an escalation of political tensions like we have not seen even in the Trump presidency, which has been a pretty tense deal. Here's Jonathan Turley, clip number 4, again talking about what Mueller has on Trump, which is nothing.
Yeah, there's a troubling pathology in the news where people seem to be unwilling to cover what is positive news for President Trump. There's not positive news as well, but that rather one-sided account is getting increasingly alarming. The fact is that there is not a strong, credible case of crime that is emerging from this investigation. After a year, after hundreds of thousands of documents that have been turned over, after multiple cooperating witnesses, after dozens of criminal counts, none of those filings have created a nexus between a criminal act and the president or even the campaign for the most part.
And collusion, Professor, is not a crime, is it?
It's not, and you know, we went through months where people were talking as if there was a collusion crime. But the interesting thing is, look, on collusion and obstruction, you have an exceptionally weak case that has emerged so far.
So an exceptionally weak case, there's nothing. Mueller's got nothing on Donald Trump. Now again, here's Alan Dershowitz talking about how significant this is from a legal standpoint and the way attorney-client confidentiality has been shredded.
I do think a decision has been made from the very top that the Mueller investigation is going to stick to Russia collusion, the campaign, obstruction of justice, and anything else relating to Trump's business dealings, any alleged relationships or payments to women, will be given over to the Southern District of New York. Now they'll work together. And this may be an attempt to squeeze Cohen. He's the lawyer. He's the guy who knows all the facts about Donald Trump, and to get him to turn against his client.
So in other words, that's the strategy he thinks, and I believe he's probably right about this. We've talked about what the possible motives of Mueller is. One, maybe to get Trump to do something rash, to get Trump to fire him so it turns him into a martyr. And what Dershowitz thinks, maybe he's trying to get Cohen to roll over on his client. Who is his client? The President of the United States. So maybe that's the end game for Bob Mueller here. And here's another soundbite for Alan Dershowitz talking about how dangerous this day is for attorney-client relations.
Look, this is a very dangerous day today for lawyer-client relations. I deal with clients all the time. I tell them on my word of honor that what you tell me is sacrosanct. And now they say, just based on probable cause, even though this was cooperation with Cohen, they can burst into the office, grab all the computers, and then give it to another FBI agent and say, you're the firewall. We want you now to read all these confidential communications, tell us which ones we can get and which ones we can't get. If this were the shoe on the other foot, if this were Hillary Clinton being investigated and they went into her lawyer's office, the ACLU would be on every television station in America jumping up and down. The deafening silence of the ACLU and civil libertarians about the intrusion into the lawyer-client confidentiality is really appalling.
Really quite appalling. So attorney-client privilege has been shredded, and Alan Dershowitz says this is a very dangerous, dark day in American history. He is exactly right. Let's go to Michael in Mobile, Alabama. Michael, welcome. What's on your mind?
Hey, Brian.
Hey.
Love your show. I'd like to say two things. One, President Trump talks about he can't get anything past Congress. He's only got to do one thing, and that's the very first item on his contract with the American people, and that is enact term limits. And he can do that very easily. All he's got to do is do a tweet or even hold a press conference and say, American people, I can't get anything through Congress. Here's the switchboard numbers for the Senate and the House. Help me tell them what we want to do, because y'all voted for it. And the second thing I want to say is, I've heard this a few times, and it really bothers me. I've heard the term reverse racism. There is no such thing as reverse racism. I heard Todd Starnes say it yesterday. When you say reverse racism, you infer that racism is always white against black, and that is not the case. Racism is racism across the board. And that's all I'd like to say. Thank you, sir.
Okay, great call, Michael. I appreciate that. And racism is just making decisions based on somebody's skin color instead of on merit. That's racism. Doesn't matter whether a black person is doing it to a white person or a white person is doing it to a black person. It might have some success. That idea about term limits, that actually could work. I mean, people are so fed up right now with the whole process, with all of Washington, D.C. If Trump called for that, it could happen. Let's go to Steve in Orange, Texas. Steve, welcome. What's on your mind? Talk to me.
Hey, Brian. Thank you for having me. Hey, listen, we got to keep our eye on the ball here, because I believe that the Bible teaches that leaders are brought into office and removed from office by him. Now, at the same time, I'm praying like crazy and fighting for President Trump as much as possible, but we got to understand that nobody's going to touch him, nobody's going to remove him unless Almighty God allows it, and right now, a nuclear holocaust isn't going to remove him unless the Lord allows it.
All right, Steve, that's a good word. As the saying goes, man proposes, but God disposes. All right, thank you, Steve. Good reminder about God's sovereignty in all of this. Let's go to Rex in Bryant, Texas. Rex, what's on your mind? Talk to me.
Yeah. Article 5, Section 2 of the Constitution states that a congressman can be removed from office if he is disloyal to the United States or not serving the American people. The investigation that's going on is definitely not serving the American people and is bordering on disloyalty, because it's going beyond its scope. I think what you should do is get a petition going and try to get as many people to sign it as you can, and see if you can get the congressmen removed at the start of this.
All right, Rex, I appreciate that. Another possible solution. Thank you, Rex. Appreciate it. Let's go to James in Meridian, Mississippi. James, I got about 15 seconds. Hit me with your best shot.
Okay, I'm kind of concerning the special prosecution breaking into the lawyer's office.
Yes, sir.
And I heard somebody just say that they could release some stuff to another judge. But I'm thinking that the only thing that ought to be released is anything related to the investigation. I hope that's what the search warrant said, and that anything else is private and confidential, and Robert Mueller is responsible for protecting it.
All right, let's hope that's the way it works out. Thank you, James.
The views and opinions expressed in this broadcast do not necessarily reflect those of the American Family Association or American Family Radio.
Faith, family, freedom. American Family Radio.
1milliondads.com. Be strengthened as a Christian leader for your wife and children, your church, your community. We believe that missing fathers is what's wrong with this country.